All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of O365Eh. In this episode, we're going to be talking with Karuana again in an unplugged version. So I'm going to let Dino lead us off.
Hey, Karuana, welcome.
Hey, thank you.
So your title, you lead the Customer Advocacy Group at Microsoft. We hear a lot about customer advocacy these days, but maybe in your own words, like tell us a little bit about what that means to you and what it entails in today's,
Sure.
what's going on today.
Yeah, I'd love to. It's an interesting thing. People have been talking about being customer advocates for a long time, but I feel like they haven't actually done it always. I'm excited to lead this group. We really combine all the power of the telemetry signals that we get from the product, information we get from our support channels, feedback we get directly with customers, with information we get from our field roles. So we have customer PMs and there are customer success managers in Microsoft that work directly with customers. And they give us a ton of feedback about Microsoft Teams. And we also take that feedback to our sister teams in SharePoint or Planner or what have you, because sometimes the feedback people are giving me isn't really about Teams itself. It's about another component they're using inside of Teams. And so we like to share that information and really turn it into actionable items on our backlog for our engineers to work on. It's things like fit and finish, it's polish, it's actual connective tissues between the different workloads. And I like working with customers. I keep some customers directly, the military and some pharmaceutical companies. And so I work with them directly so that I can actually be there with the customer and really hear what they're saying and have empathy for what they're going through in this sort of transformation. So taking that and bringing that message home to everyone around the world that's working on Teams, it's really a privilege and it's fun and people are really interested in it. I know sometimes folks, wonder, I put something in user voice, does anybody read it? Yes, every month, all the time. I read user voice every day. So, we like to advocate for what the customers need.
And maybe, speaking of user voice, because we certainly our community uses it, and
Yeah.
but like, what can you say the kind of metrics that you're seeing in there? Like, is the feedback sort of overwhelming in terms of the numbers? Like, what are you seeing out there?
No, it's not about metrics, it's about quality. Yeah, of course, we do pay attention to the top issues that people upvote. Some of those have been there for a while that we continue to work on, and some of them are new, right? So it's really about what people are voting on. It's not overwhelming, but it is active, right? It's
Right.
certainly every week we get new issues. Every day people are going and putting in new votes on issues that they care about or asking questions and comments. So that's why we do that monthly update on those top issues to let people know what's happening or continuing to happen, for instance, on things that they care about. So we've seen a steady uptick. It's a very passionate community. The folks that support Teams, they have very strong ideas about things. And so, we appreciate that. I think it's great. So I love it.
Cool, thank you.
So when working with customers to leverage, say, Microsoft phone system, as a partner, we're kind of in a new world where it's not enough to simply just turn on the service. What resources are available for that adoption to both customers and partners for a specific Skype for business-centric workload like telephony? Things like going from a handset to a soft phone with a headset.
Right. That's a great question. So anybody who's making the transition into Microsoft Teams from Skype for Business should be going to that ak.ms Skype to Teams site and putting together and using, I should say, the adoption materials and the journey materials that my colleague Sarah Goodwin and her team have put together. They're excellent. I do think they focus more on the client aspect than specifically moving from a hardline, phone experience to a headset like we're doing now. But I do also find that people are very accustomed to that in their personal life. Most people have cell phones today. They're comfortable with working on the different types of technology that exists on a cell phone, and having that on your computer is very similar. So also there's some great videos that we have on Coffee in the Cloud that can talk about, your first 5 minutes in a Teams meeting. I find that no matter who you are, coming from a desk phone or not, it's always good to have somebody watch a quick video about what a Teams meeting experience is like, just to orient them to where the controls are and things of that nature, because sometimes it's not as obvious as those of us who do it every day think it is. And that's a big change you're referring to. So we like people to get that information. All of our adoption guidance is on that Microsoft adoption site that I've been discussing. So I encourage people to go there and take a look at everything that's available as they make their transition.
Perfect.
Yeah, and then I guess from adoption and inclusion, how has your experience been with regards to increasing the accessibility features in Teams? So we know we have the immersive reader, and then what's currently in preview is the live caption. So how is Microsoft adding, or the Teams team adding more of that functionality for accessible users?
Accessibility is really one of our number one goals, to make sure that we're really driving inclusive technology. And you mentioned two of the key features, obviously, the immersive reader and live captions, and there's more coming. But I really want to call out that inclusivity really starts with the people who are in the meeting, not the technology. And so making sure that people understand how to make sure every voice is heard, how to make sure that people have an opportunity to finish their thought. Sometimes it's very easy to overtalk one another when you're on a digital meeting or a virtual meeting. And this is only exacerbated by folks who may be using additional capabilities like live captions. I'll have many people leave live captions on when English is their second language, just to validate and be sure that they're understanding their English-speaking partners well. Obviously, I work around the world, so that happens a lot. And to do that well, I have to make sure that I'm not speaking too quickly and that I'm, being clear. Now, the translation is good at being able to discern when people are talking over each other. It knows your voice and learns that. But nonetheless, inclusive meetings are really about the behaviors of people, and then we like to support it with the technology itself.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and still on the adoption theme, this one's near and dear to my heart. Obviously, a number of organizations who are adopting Teams, of course, are coming from Skype for Business. And we touched upon that earlier with the voice workload. But in your experience, any top one or two tips for organizations who are coming from that Skype for Business world going to Teams in terms of increasing adoption?
Absolutely. So imagine if only 20% of the people in your company had email. What would that do to your ability to communicate broadly? I see a lot of companies who are taking people into Teams in phases. And for chat and basic meetings like this, that doesn't make any sense. I understand why people are doing it, but it's a really poor user experience and a blocker to adoption if only a few people at a time can have conversations within the product. So I really advocate, spend a little bit more time planning up front. Take a look at my 7 questions for good governance of Teams. Understand your information architecture. I have webinars about this. This is a big blocker for a lot of people. They're concerned about Teams sprawl, and I get that. So you can do a little planning up front to avoid that, and then turn on the big red button. Let everybody have a modern meeting experience and let everybody communicate with each other in chat, and then move into the collaboration in Teams locations, move your departments, move applications, and have real work that needs to be done inside of the Teams. This also depends on the size of your organization, because of course now you can have up to 5,000 people in a team. So there's no reason, if you're smaller than that organization, that you can't use the organizational wide team and pin your intranet and commonly used tools inside of that team and foster that communication. So, I feel like the phased approach is a standard IT method. I've used it myself for doing technology, but with Teams, it's very detrimental to the end user experience. You really want to avoid what I call the empty conference room system. What happens if you walk into a conference room and there's no one there? You leave, right? And you think that conference room is boring. Right? Well, Teams is not boring, but there needs to be people there to make it meaningful and really to have some empathy for the users. you're asking them to change and to learn something new. It's up to us as the technologists and system administrators to make it a worthwhile experience. When I host someone in my home, I make sure there's food. I want them to feel warm and welcome. Rolling out technology can be like that. We have to have some hospitality in the process. So, I realize that it's a new thing and it's a big thing, but check out that governance information and let's implement that and get everyone on Teams so they can have a better experience, frankly, in their meetings and in communicating, especially on that mobile application.
Yeah, that's a good point. And in my experience too, I'm sure you've seen this. I've seen some organizations who adopt Teams in the context of this is a replacement for Skype for Business. And, actually sometimes, credit to Teams, it actually can be, of course, but it's so much more and it's so much better if you reimagine and educate people on how to work as teams.
Yes, absolutely. And, one of the things that we have that I know customers will hear about, and I'm sure you already know about, is the teamwork assessment. Whenever I talk to a customer, the first thing I want to understand is how do they collaborate today? Is it all email and SharePoint? And if so, that's great. But then you're going to need to help them understand the value of the transparency that's created when you're working in chat, of the files all being in the context of that conversation and being able to meet right there. But if you don't pin some of that information and move some of that information, then what people have is, quote unquote, just one more tool. You have to actually make the move into Teams. And that's why I don't read email that much anymore. I go into my email a couple times a day for those random ones that still come through. But all of my projects are centered in Teams. All of my customer interaction now is actually in Teams. And so, it really gives me, I saw somebody in the elevator in Las Vegas the other day, and she was spending time on her mobile device, filing her email, putting it in folders like we used to do, right? And I thought to myself, wow, I don't have to do that anymore, because the conversation's already filed. It's already in the team or the channel that it's supposed to be in. And so I've already got that time back that I used to spend filing my email because I'm that girl, right? So, I feel like really moving real projects and work and helping people to get more from the system is, really why I get up in the morning right now. So.
Nice. Great tips.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Karuana, for hopping on and giving us a unplugged version of some of the things that you do, and definitely your input around getting people to Microsoft Teams as quickly and as best as possible for that better user experience. I think is huge, right? We talk about that a lot. When you finally get somebody to Teams, they'll have the best user experience, but in your words, getting them there appropriately is the best way. So
you guys are so nice. Thank you. And in your unplugged version, I expected you to give me something really hard that I was going to have difficulty with or confrontational, but no, you're Canadian and you're lovely. So thank you so much there you go. So thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karuana.
Thanks everybody for listening in, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks.